I have 3 UniFi network video recorders, 1 UNVR Pro, 2 non-pros. In this video, let's talk about UNVR stacking. Currently, Ubiquiti has 2 network video recorder products, the UNVR Pro and the UNVR. For either of them, if you go to the web page for the product on Ubiquiti's website, go to the capacity calculator, you can see how many cameras one recorder can support. For example, for the UNVR Pro, it can support maximally 20 4K cameras. And for this UNVR, the number is 15. You can also choose different types of cameras to see what are the combined supported number. From this user interface, you can get some type of upper limits, right? But if you go to the product sheets from Ubiquiti, you may see another set of number. For example, here in this PDF file, Ubiquiti says the UNVR Pro supports 60 cameras, different number than what we saw on the website. But no matter what, there are some upper limits for either unit. Keep in mind, this is just due to the limitation of the CPU and the memory. So the storage is another story. It doesn't impact the camera counts, but of course, it will impact the recorder's retention history. What if you have more cameras than the upper limit? In the past, the only option is to use another UNVR to host all the additional cameras, which means you will face multiple UniFi Protect interface because they run totally independently. So it's super inconvenient. Even if you don't have that many cameras, you may want to have very long retention history for your cameras. But what if your hard drives don't have the capacity? But now Ubiquiti supports so-called UNVR stacking. In this video, let's go to the details. In fact, Ubiquiti's UNVR stacking is intending to support some type of scalability. So let me first talk about, in my understanding, how scalability should work. Once one unit of your system is reaching the upper limit, there are 2 ways to scale it. One way is called scale up. So basically, you keep one unit, but you keep adding hardwares. For example, CPUs, memories, hard drives. Apparently, Ubiquiti doesn't support this because you cannot add CPU and memories. When it comes to hard drives, you can replace your existing hard drives with new ones, but basically that's it. You still cannot exceed the upper limit for camera numbers. In the right side, another way to scale your system is called scale out. In the enterprise computing world, when people talk about scale out, you need to support, okay, you can add 1 extra unit or more than 1, and then 1 unit in your system may be the master, the other ones are slaves, or they can be all parallel depending on your setup, and then they share a pool of storage. You don't designate each hard drive to 1 unit, they are shared. Of course, this is an extremely simplified diagram. There are many other variances, but whether Ubiquiti's UNVR stacking falls within any of this, let's take a look. In this video, we will talk about how to set up UNVR stacking and how the camera load balancing works. What if you have some non-camera UniFi Protect devices, whether they work with UNVR stacking? Once you enable UNVR stacking, what will happen to the new camera adoption? We will check how or whether you can still access the child UNVR once the UNVR stacking is set up. What if one unit is done? What will be the situation for the whole system? In the end, we will talk about whether you are able to mix and match to add different type of UNVR units. This is my lab environment. From UDM Pro, you can see I already have UNVR 1 and 2 units set up. And in the lower part of the screen, you can see in the left side, it's the UNVR 1. It has 3 devices associated already. And in the right side, it is UNVR 2. It's empty. It doesn't have any devices yet. what you see two here, they are just the ones which are already adopted to UNVR 1. You can tell from the orange color here. But from UNVR 1, there's no any functionality for me to manually add UNVR 2 to the stacking. It also doesn't automatically prompt me to do anything. Why is that? According to Ubiquiti, the requirement to add a child UNVR is it has to be brand new, ready for setup, or you have to factory reset it. It doesn't make sense, but to proceed, I have to reset the UNVR 2. In your case, think about it when you proceed, because you will lose all your historical recordings if you reset a UNVR. Let me go to the console setting, scroll a little bit. Here I can do the factory reset. Okay, it seems the reset is done. Let me click this button. Okay, this is the initial setup page, right? And in the left side for UNVR 1, you can see it automatically pop up, tell me a new UNVR was detected. So I have two options, whether I want to stack it or set it up as a standalone console. Of course, I want to do the stacking. By the way, interestingly, it pop up two black windows. I don't know why. Click stack, let it run. See the right side automatically changed. Okay, it's very fast, just about 10 seconds, it's done. In the right side, let me manually refresh it. Okay, it just pop up a logon screen. We will talk about this window later. Let's go back to UNVR 1. You may not notice the change, but there is one minor thing. See the picture? Now it has two UNVR. Not sure whether you noticed before the stacking, it shows only one UNVR. So that's the only difference you can see from the dashboard screen. Go to the UniFi devices. It doesn't show the stacked unit. It seems it's very transparent. It seems the end user doesn't need to care about the existence of UNVR stacking. You know what? It's a good thing if Ubiquiti can hide all the stacking details, treat the two UNVRs as one single bigger one. That's a great thing, but I doubt that's the case. Let's proceed the testing. Let me go to the storage settings. Here it shows the two units side by side. UNVR 2 doesn't exist anymore, and the official name is UNVR 1 stacked. So for UNVR 1, the storage information doesn't change, the same information as before the stacking. Let me check the second unit. It's switched to the same setting as UNVR 1 by default. That kind of makes sense, but I'm more interested once the stacking is already done, whether I can change the second unit to different configuration. Let me do it. It seems I do have the choice to change it. Okay. It doesn't care whether the second unit, the child UNVR, has the same storage configuration or not. This also implies there won't be failover. If the storage is different, the failover won't be possible. Next, let's talk about load balancing. This is the feature I'm most interested in because that's the whole point of implementing UNVR stacking. So in the lower left, you can see the UniFi Protect user interface for the parent UNVR unit. You may notice there's a column here. It says NVR, and the value is very strange, ended with two numbers. In fact, these two numbers are the last two sections of the MAC address of the UNVR unit. Ubiquiti didn't give the two units user-friendly name. I can live with that. At this moment, you can see all the three UniFi Protect devices are all associated with the parent UNVR unit, just like before the UNVR stacking. Let's see whether we can change it. For example, what if I want to move this G file flags from the parent unit to the child unit? Click on the camera, go to setting. Here there's a new option. It allows me to choose the UNVR unit. If I switch to the second one, okay, this is a warning, and this is the most disappointing warnings for today. If I want to move this camera from the parent unit to child unit, all of my previous recordings will be lost. I'm so disappointed. Proceed. Okay, now the G5 flags is associated with the child UNVR, right? As you can see in the diagram, the cameras on the second unit cannot share the storage of the parent unit. It has to use, that's the so-called stacking feature from Ubiquiti. It just provides you a single UI, but each camera is still fixed with a particular UNVR storage. It cannot share the pool. And because you already moved it from parent unit to child unit, of course, you cannot share the CPU and the memory from the parent unit anymore. In fact, this also means once this child unit is done, this camera will not be available anymore because its storage is only in the second unit. It's so limited. It's a joke. Then let's investigate another special situation, the non-camera devices. You know, Ubiquiti Protect also has several non-camera things. For example, this sensor. I can also think of the LED floodlight. They are also part of the UniFi Protect families, but they are not cameras, right? This type of accessories, they have a common thing. You can associate them with a camera. For example, for this UP-Sense, the sensor, I can pair it with a camera. Let me say G3 instance. Apply changes. This sensor now is paired with this G3 camera, which means they can have some interactions. If now I move the G3 instance to the child unit, you can see now it's associated with the parent UNVR, right? So let me click it, move it to the child UNVR. It doesn't give me any warning about the sensor. Once it's done, see the sensor, it is still associated with the first UNVR. If I go to its settings, the paired camera settings simply gone. I would rather call it a defect. At least Ubiquiti should give me a warning when I move the camera from parent UNVR to the child because it has a associated non-camera device, right? My biggest concern about this situation is the sensor should be migrated to the child UNVR together with the paired camera. If I go to the sensor, even if I want to manually move it to the second UNVR, I have no choice here. So which means I have to remove it and manually adopt it again, hoping it happened to be adopted to the same UNVR as the camera so that I can use it. To put it the other word, the UNVR stacking doesn't work if your device is a sensor. Next, let's check how Ubiquiti balance the new camera adoptions so that the two UNVRs have the balanced loads. I have 3 G5 flags. Let me adopt them one by one. As you can see now, 2 cameras are associated with the child UNVR and the parent UNVR only has a sensor. I assume the new cameras will be adopted to the parent UNVR first, but let's see. As you can see, I already added the 3 new cameras to the system and now they are ready to be adopted. Interesting observation is, see the UNVR column. So they already have different UNVR MAC addresses, which means even before you start the adoption, it's already decided which UNVR the camera will be adopted to. 2 of them are allocated to the parent UNVR. Only 1 is allocated to the child. That also makes sense because if everything is as planned, you can see 3 cameras will be on the child UNVR, 2 on the parent, and 1 accessory is on the parent as well. So it's evenly distributed. Let me click all the links to adopt them. Okay, then, as we expected, they were adopted to the ones which we saw. So before we proceed, let me add a comment about the new camera adoption thing. Since Ubiquiti doesn't allow the two UNVRs to share the same single storage pool, this new camera adoption thing, it's so automatic, it already decides which UNVR to adopt to. It doesn't add any value. In fact, it may make things even worse. I want to manually decide which camera to add to which UNVR. If I'm not comfortable with the predefined automatic allocation by Ubiquiti, I have to select the camera and then change the UNVR manually, right? It's just add an extra step. I would rather Ubiquiti allow us to manually select the UNVR. Let's move on, talk about next topic. Once the child UNVR is added to the stacking, whether we can still access the child UNVR individually. Let's take a look. So in the UniFi network controller, you can see the two UNVRs. They both have the same name because once I add the second UNVR to the parent, Ubiquiti automatically named the second UR with the same name as the parent. But from UniFi network controller, we can see they have different IP address, right? In the lower right window, let me manually type in the IP address of the child UNVR. This is the logon screen. So even after inputting the correct credentials and the authentication code, I still receive this red message. It seems Ubiquiti simply disabled the direct access to the child UNVR. That's okay. Then why bother giving me this logon UI, right? Why not directly display the error message when I try to access this IP address? So it doesn't make sense to me. It's not big deal. At least I know the child UNVR is not directly accessible. After talking about how to access the child UNVR, let's find out how to access the cameras for the child UNVR. From the parent UNVR, even though I see all the cameras listed together, if I go to the live view, you can see by default, the system generated two views. One for the parent UNVR, the other one for the child UNVR. Let me see whether I can create a new live view to include all the cameras from both UNVR units. Let me try it. Yes, I'm able to do that. That's good. At least it can give you the false impression that all cameras are managed together, right? This is good. Next topic is the one I am most interested in. It's about failover. When people talk about scalability, whether a device can fail over is very important. For example, now we have two UNVR. They are stacked together. If one UNVR is down, whether the cameras which were connected to the failed UNVR, whether they are able to automatically transition to the other UNVR so that they still work, I believe I already know the answer, but I still want to test it out. At this moment, you can see 3 cameras are running on the second UNVR. Let me first try to simulate the failure of the child UNVR. Okay, I just shut down the power supply for the child UNVR. Give it some time. Let's see whether I can still access the web interface. About 2 or 3 minutes passed. You can see from the upper right, the UniFi network controller, it's still not updated, still showing the 2 UNVR units. But in the lower right, you can already see I'm not able to access the IP address for the child UNVR already. And in the left side, you can see now it's only showing the cameras which are associated with the parent UNVR. So it's not showing anything from the child UNVR anymore. If I go to the dashboard, you can see it's still showing the 2 units picture. And in the system logs, it even doesn't mention anything about the child UNVR is down. So this is very disappointing because not only I cannot access the cameras for the child UNVR, but also the system even doesn't give me any warning, any messages, just like nothing happened. So this is the situation if the child UNVR is down. Now let's see what will happen if the parent UNVR is down. You know what? I already have bad feeling, but let's see. Okay, it's done. Give it some time. As you can see, after the parent UNVR failed, I cannot connect to the parent UNVR directly. Of course, that's expected. But in the right side, because the child UNVR is still accessible, right? So let me try to see whether this time I can connect to the IP address of the child UNVR. I still got the same error message. So this is what I got if I directly access the local IP address of the child UNVR, right? So let me try another approach. Remotely access my stacked UNVR system. This is what I get after trying remotely accessing my stacked UNVR. So the UniFi website allow me to try to connect to it, but give me this error, console offline. So this is another very disappointing thing. Even if my child UNVR is still active, I cannot connect to it anymore just because the parent UNVR is down. The parent is always the master. The child cannot work as a master when the parent is down, which means this implementation of UNVR stacking is so primitive. It's lacking so many important basic features when it comes to scalability. Finally, the very last topic for this video. So whether you can mix different UniFi consoles to enable the UNVR stacking feature. If you have two UNVR non-pro versions, yes, they are possible to be stacked together. Two UNVR Pros, yes, but you cannot mix UNVR and UNVR Pro. From technical perspective, I don't see any reason why not. I would rather believe it's just some blocker put by Ubiquiti to prevent you from doing that. And the very last thing is another disappointing point. If you have UniFi routers, for example UDM Pro, UDR, they can also run UniFi Protect, and they also have their own storage, right? It will be much better if you can enable stacking between these units and the UNVR, right? But it's not allowed. For example, in the right side, this is a UDM Pro, right? So you can see, yes, it has the UniFi Protect running, but I have no way to add it to the UNVR stacking. Okay, I complained a lot about the UNVR stacking functionality. I have to say this is the most disappointing feature from Ubiquiti on their devices. Okay, thanks for watching.